Moving on to policy 3.60, flag display and pledge. This is a request to revise policy 3.60, flag display and pledge. It revises section 2 to reflect current requirements in Florida Statute 1003.44, which is the patriotic program statute, almost verbatim. This matter was discussed by the Policy and Forms Committee in October. And if you look at section 2, you can see the changes there. I'd be glad to
Mr. Chair, I just want to say, and I know you're going to, I'm sure, I pretty much can guarantee you're going to have some feelings on this too. I have major issue with this policy, and I don't think there's probably anybody up here that doesn't have that same thing. But this came as a result of HB 7029 last year, which was the train bill. This was stuck in at the last minute. I don't believe that it's required under federal law. I don't believe it's required under state law, and what's worse is they didn't just tell us it's going to be in state law, they mandated we pass policy in order to do it. So they're telling us again local control, and again these are people who I would have thought would never have wanted that. I know by statute I'm supposed to approve something when it comes to this, and I know Mr. Bradshaw would remind me of it, but I'm going to have a very difficult time voting for this. And I know that it's going to be a requirement, but I cannot support the fact that all we are asking for is to be respectful. We do that when another country's national anthem is played. We do that when there's a rising of another flag. We do not salute it. We do not pledge allegiance to it, but we stand out of respect. Even countries that were our enemies during Olympics, during other activities. And I am grateful that this district took this very seriously, because when we did have this that we required in policy, I can tell you I had a principal call me this morning, a former Citrus County principal, that said that they took this so seriously they were disciplining when our students would joke about it, because we wanted to make sure they knew that we took it seriously. So I will stand down.
I totally agree with Thomas. It's a very offensive. I remember having, as a teacher, only one student who sat down during the lecture. I was very fortunate I only had one. And someone asked him why he did. And he said, well, his parents told him to not stand to pledge because they were from another country. And the background is that they had come here to do some business, and they quite a bit of money to be able to live and do what they wanted to do. And we're very pleased with that. We said, as far as pledging allegiance, and as far as observing respect for the country, he wasn't going to do it. But it pays we have the freedom of speech right, absolutely. But as far as we can understand it, because I'm with Thomas, anytime I hear something that from another country, a song we play, you stand out of respect. It's not because you are weak to other countries, just you stand out of respect. So this bothers me, terribly bothers me.
Don't we already have in school law that we can only require the students to stand?
That's
what's
policy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying policy, I'm saying in school law. Mr. Bradshaw. School law, am I interpreting? Was it school law that said that we couldn't require them to recite the pledge, but they did have to stand? And it's in school law. And this is changes, but it's not changed in school law yet.
No, it is.
So we don't have an option on it?
They have the right not to stand on places that
And, you know,
Do we charge them tuition then when we come to our free schools?
no, I mean, I know what you're saying, and that's what's very frustrating about this. The legislature is requiring us to do this and to put it in policy. They didn't just simply put it as part of their law. They put it that we must pass policy. And I don't know why they went that far.
So this is what legislature, which country is requiring this?
Which country? I know. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is a big shock to me when this went through, because I, hated the fact that, we can't make students recite, but I understand the reason behind that. But when they stopped them from us requiring them to stand, I was very surprised that the legislature passed that. And it is sad because I think the general public, when they read an article, even today's article, makes it sound like it's our decision, that we're the ones that are passing this, right? That we're the ones that are no longer going to require students to stand, and yet that's not the case at all. This is a state law. Now, Mr. Kennedy brought up a point that he said he would have a hard time voting for this. So, Mr. Bradshaw, what if this board were not to vote to approve this policy change? What is the procedure? How does that take place?
I would advise you not to do that.
Well, the question I think is what in statute does it specifically say? And I think maybe all of us are looking for a way that, yeah, if you would.
Abstain, can we abstain?
But what we can do is we can get the newspapers around the state probably.
We've
publish
tried.
The names of the people.
We did. And do you know what?
Because we're coming up to graduation and if we got kids sitting down, I guarantee you, we're gonna get calls.
I appreciate your position, and I agree with it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what the policy does is tells my staff how to treat the students that do. So what you're telling, if we don't have a policy, it kind of leaves our staff out there as to, so what do they do? When a student doesn't stand, is our staff then to take action, disciplinary action against that student, against state statute?
Oh, no,
So
I think I would agree.
I appreciate your position, but unfortunately,
We need to shift the blame over to Tallahassee.
it places staff in an awkward position when they don't
We're not
have,
gonna do that.
when there's not a support policy in place.
And I would agree with that, Mr. Mullen, but I think there's a way that maybe if we as a board can say that we also don't support the idea that they may sit, although we can't necessarily mandate them to stand, and that may be in a very uncomfortable position, and I know for those who don't know, Mr. Mullen is a former Army captain. I know he takes this serious to the point where I know he has personal frustration, to say the very least, on this. So,
You want me to read that?
yes, please.
I'll just get to the point. It says, "The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag shall be recited at the beginning of the day in each public elementary, middle, and high school in the state. Each student shall be informed by a written notice published in a student handbook or a similar publication pursuant to section 1006.07, that the student has the right not to participate in reciting the pledge. Upon written request by his or her parent, the student must be excused from reciting the pledge, including standing and placing the right hand over his or her heart."
So my
It
question
does go on to say, though, Mr. Kennedy, when the pledge is given, unexcused students must show full respect to the flag by standing at attention, and then removing their headdresses except when the headdress is worn for religious purposes. So unless it's embodied by the parents, they still have to.
So, Mr. Bradshaw, can they rephrase that maybe to say that the only time a student can be excused is in writing? I mean, it's the way it's written now,
That's an
it says
order,
shall provide written notice.
I think,
if requested.
let me say, because I think we redid that when we put it in the student code of conduct.
Well, that was going to be my question. Now, here's the other thing. I know technically the student code of conduct is a policy or it is a part of a rulemaking process, if I'm more legally correct. The question is, if it's in there as notification to the parents, is there a reason we must also include it in 3.6?
all right, I'm not sure.
Okay, so we have had to give notice in the code of conduct. And I believe it's even in there, this verbiage that a student has a right to do that. Now, while I just had as much problem then, the difference is, I believe that I thought we were providing that, meeting the requirement of statute by providing that information in writing in the student code, the Code of Student Conduct, which is our formal kind of notice to parents of our rules and requirements. So I'm saying, why in addition to that do we need to also put a pass it in policy? And if so, and if we do not, then I have no intentions of wanting to pass the policy with us in there.
We put in the code of conduct, the pledge of allegiance to the flag shall be recited at the beginning of the day in each public elementary, middle, and high school in the state. Students must show full respect to the flag by standing at attention and removing any headdress, except such headdress is worn for religious purpose. Students have the right not to participate in reciting the pledge upon written request by his or her parent/legal guardian. A student shall be excused from reciting the pledge including standing in place of the right. Should say-
Which meets statute.
Yes.
So my question is, why do we need to change 3.6? That's just, sorry.
Could they take paragraph 2 out of 3.6, Mr. Bradshaw?
Did they take paragraph 2 out of there?
You can either take it out or use what is already in the code, which you've already passed.
Yeah. And I guess what I would say is
I wouldn't take all of it out because I think you need to leave in the part that says the code of student conduct that is distributed to all students shall contain written notification.
I'm certainly, while I'm not still unhappy with the result of it, I think the language in the code of conduct mirrors mostly the legislature's the legislators' mandate, and it certainly allows us to then put that,
You can take the second line out.
Well, I think we need to reference Florida statute in this, according to Florida statute. Because this policy is Florida statute. This is why it's there.
I have no problem, right?
And I think-
It is down here, Mr. Goss, I'm assuming you're wanting something
Up in- yeah, yes.
So that the verbiage makes it clear.
3.44.
Yes.
I am
You can
completely
put that,
agreeing.
you can put the section number, the code of student conduct that is distributed to all students shall contain written notification that the student has the right not to participate in reciting the pledge of allegiance.
You want me to just put in accordance with Florida statute?
Pursuant to.
Yeah.
Is that?
I think that needs to be in there. Yeah, maybe even start that out,
Yeah, pursuant. I can reword that some with Mr. Dixon just to make it flow a little better. If you like.
Yeah, and I think I agree with kind of what Mr. Mullen was saying. Is there a way we can make it sound like only students who have been, written permission by the parent are not required to recite or stand? I don't know. I like to do it.
I see what you're saying. Maybe like pursuant to Florida statute, the code of student conduct that is distributed to all students shall contain, verbiage or something that states upon written request, the student does not, a written request by a parent /student does not have to.
I mean, there's 2 ways to say that. You can say upon written request, the student doesn't have to stand, or you can say all students have to
Right.
stand.
Right.
Unless they have a written.
Yeah,
Well, I
that's
like
fine.
that.
I like that.
It says
I
the
like
same
that.
thing, but it puts the emphasis on all students standing.
I agree.
I like that.
This has to come back for you to vote on to move forward for publication, so we'll wordsmith that up and have that back to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
Just thank you, board, for having the same. I didn't think we didn't, but I just, this one upsets me.
Thank you.
I'm with you, Wisconsin. I'm with you, Wisconsin.
The next request is to review new policy 4.115 for grade forgiveness. This is required by statute 103.4282, which is the requirements for a standard high school diploma. And this was discussed by policy and forms on January 19th. This is all new, so everything's underlined.
Mr. Mullen, I was looking in the room to see who from education was here. This is laid out in statute, because and I know Ms. Counts, I'm sure, can attest to the frustration that I know a lot of our high school teachers have of percentages versus letter grades and so forth, but this is laid out in statute, if I recall, including, what defines, that a percentage must be defined as a letter grade, if I recall as well. So, and I say that because from my own kids' teachers, they're like, tell your dad that we want it, and I'm like, I'm not trying to disagree, but we're doing what statute says. So this is, again, a statutorial mandate of how we grade the students, and we don't have discretion on this.
I think we've been doing some of this, the required classes are required, but the elective classes, we've been doing that quite some time to make sure that the kids, that they're 2.0.
Right.
If they've taken so many electives, then the counselor can look at their transcript, and instead of counting this elective, they'll count this elective, and that adjust their, because they have so many electives now with 30 opportunities to get 24 credits. So we've been doing that number 2 for a long time, especially with athletes.
I think this just codifies what we're
Yeah.
primarily doing.
And I agree, and Ms. Counts, and I know she was another coach, long-term coach, is there's times when we did that, it was for the students' benefit, because we knew if we could get them involved and kept them in sports, we kept them coming to school. And that was sometimes our only motivator. It's the CERMI issue all over again, so. But this is statutorial, this language is coming from.
Right, it came from EMCS, and it is
EMCS.
required in the policy.
Much of the people that
That's what I figured, yeah. And I think that's why I knew it was in statute, because it was a conversation we had at that time.
Okay, and number 5, the last one, under review is a revision of policy 6.22, teaching out of field. This adds section 3 based on a revision to Florida statute on teacher teaching out of field 1012.42. And this was discussed by Policy and Forms in October. So we're just adding section 3. The requirement to report out-of-field teachers on the district website within 30 days before the beginning of each semester.
We've always had to publish, is that correct, Mr. Mullen? Because I know like in newsletters and stuff, we had to send notification home. This is just mandating, I guess, specifically where
The website.
the website.
We send it.
Oh, I'm
either-
sorry.
That's
It's like-
okay. We send it either newsletter, school newsletter, or parent newsletter. This is just one more requirement. We started doing it this year. So it will be, we are working with Chris Tangler, and it will be on the site.
And
we
remember,
started
last
it
year's
this year, so we
legislation
can-
changed to require that if a parent has a student with an out-of-field teacher, they can request that that student be moved to another classroom. So that.
So last year's legislature restricted us even more on that. And I say that because there was an earlier conversation about the understanding that our board was somehow restricting something that was state statute, that they even intensified last year even more.
And that's another fact of Ms. Swain's presentation at the board meeting about out-of-field teachers. That puts the school in a bind as well, then, when you have somebody out-of-field, if the parents don't want their child in that out-of-field class, then that in-field teacher is going to have more students than that out-of-field teacher. So we can't afford to run a classroom with 5 kids in it because nobody wants to be in that. And that hasn't happened, but it potentially can
The
happen.
legislature also did with high HE teachers, highly effective teachers, I thought, where you could request. Was that not, did that end up making it in the final legislation that you could request that your child be a high? There was something on that if they were not an E or an HE, that they, okay, that may not.
Well, there's
This-
a requirement for students that score at a certain level.
That's what it is, it's that they could, those students could request, they have to be with an E or an HE.
Or that a teacher, that if a student is retained, they cannot have a needs improvement teacher 2 years in a row. I mean, there's legislation.
Okay, that's what
that
I'm
is-
thinking of.
Well,
There's a
you
lot
have
of
to
dots
monitor
we gotta
that.
connect when we sit down and start with the kids in class.
And what's frustrating about that, but we have, teachers that are great teachers, and I think about like coaching. Sometimes a great coach could be a great coach in tennis, and they may just be as a great coach in another sport, because good coaching can be good coaching, And the same thing with teaching. It is exactly. So it's frustrating. And again, these are state mandates telling us how to locally run our schools.
I'm noticing a lot of state mandates that require things to go on the website, reports and things. That's where everybody gets their information.
I'm noticing a lot of frustration at the board this morning.
That concludes our workshops. These will be back for advertising.
It hasn't come back.
Talking about the service animals,
Yes.
The pony law.
It's coming.
Maybe it's coming to be voted on. To approve that. Yeah, so this is just.
It'll be in our student code of conduct in some form or another, whether it's actually in the book or not.
It's already been.
The service animal, because it's in policy. I'm assuming. Okay, understand. We're just having to meet.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Mr. Dixon, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Doggy patrol.